When building a mobile app for your business, traditionally there's been two routes. Either you opt for a low or no-code app builder, which allows non-developers to create simple applications quickly. However, these apps are unlikely to offer the same rich functionality of a custom-developed app, and often aren't able to integrate into existing core systems. Alternatively, you may have opted to custom develop an app, but is it worth the effort of managing the App Store, learning another JavaScript language, and getting a design agency involved to build a decent native mobile app? Well, the good news is, maybe you don't have to go through all that. With JIGX, you can quickly create beautiful native apps without the cost and effort usually associated with custom development. In our session today, we will convert a simple mobile form created using a low-code development tool, Fulcrum in this case, to a native mobile app using the JIGX platform. You could develop the same app from scratch, but if you've invested in developing mobile forms, you don't need to throw that effort away. We can work with you to convert your existing forms, hook them up to your core systems, including job management systems, ERP, or asset management systems. It's the fastest way to get a fully fledged, beautiful native mobile app securely integrated with your backend data and in the hands of your users. I'll now pass to Adam Castle to run us through the possibilities.
Thanks, Joe. In front of us is the Fulcrum template that I've converted into our JIGX form. The JIGX forms are not only easier and smarter, but they allow us to persist the data into our system of record. Here is the code from our lake tree conversion utility. It has converted the text boxes and other controls, and as we selected to persist the data within SQL, it has also generated code to read and write from SQL Server. On the right-hand side, we have a field service solution that displays all jobs assigned to the current user. As we drill into this solution, we can see a detailed list of jobs. Selecting a specific job, we can see the details, we can see the location on a map, and to reduce screen clutter, we can have collapsible sections to hide and show other relevant information about this job. We also have a drop-down that allows us to fill out additional forms and associate these directly to this job. So the first thing I need to do is to add my form into the job list. On the top left, within Visual Studio, I have a forms list data source. I'm going to take an existing option, make a quick copy, and just update this to point to my new form. I'm going to save and publish these changes directly to the JIGX platform. Once this has been published, I can then go back into my job, open up the forms drop-down list, and I can now see my new forms there. When I click on my new form, I can now see the form that was converted from my JIGX utility. So the first thing I want to do is associate my form to my job. To make it easier, I'm going to open an existing form and take two fields, the form ID and the job ID. Taking that code, I'm going to go back into my new form that I've converted and scroll down to the form section. As we do that, we can see other data sources such as the drop-down data sources that have been converted from the Fulcrum template. As you can see, these are just static values. They don't point to a system of record. I've pasted these. Once again, I will save. I will publish the changes to my JIGX platform. And if I go back into my job utilities and select my form, you can now see the changes that I've made. In this case, we've actually provided a job ID. The way we do this is when we select to open that form, we pass in the context of the job, and we can then pre-populate a lot of the form. Now, when I converted my template, I selected to persist the data within SQL Server. So the conversion utility is smart enough to actually generate the SQL code for me to help create a table to store the data, as well as a store procedure to both create and also read the data as well. In this case, we can see the store procedure, it actually passes in a JSON object that the store procedure breaks apart and inserts into the actual table. We can also see the SQL Server table where the data will be persisted. The late tree conversion utility will also create two additional JIGX functions. One for creating and updating the data in the SQL Server. We can see the store procedure that it calls, and it passes in the form data as a JSON object into this. And the other function will be for retrieving the record. It's going to call a get store procedure and pass in a form ID to retrieve the relevant data. We now want to populate the drop-down values from our system of record. And this is because a lot of other mobile platforms only allow static values to exist within the drop-downs. In this example, we're going to take the name of person reporting to field. We're going to change it from a text box to a drop-down and retrieve the data from a system of record. We are going to use an existing JIG function that has been created. In this case, it points to a store procedure that will get the job site managers by the job ID. Of course, that job ID is passed into our form, so we can populate our drop-down as soon as they open the form. The first thing we're going to do is to create a data source that will read from our JIGX function to get the job site managers. You can see the different capabilities regarding integration. We can point to Salesforce, SQL Server, and any REST endpoint. We'll create a query, and all we want to do here is return the display name of the job site manager. We can also pass in a job ID. In this case, it'll be from the job ID text box that we copied on there previously. Once we have our data source, we'll go into the form and comment out the text field that we will replace with a drop-down. We will use some values from our previous controls, such as the label and the instance ID, and we will specify the data source that we just created previously. For the title and for the value for the drop-down, we will use the display name of the data source as well. We will save and deploy the changes to the JIGX tenant. Once those changes have been deployed and published, we can then go back into our job. We can open up our form that we converted, and we can now see the remainder of our form. As we scroll down, we can see the other controls that were converted and the other drop-downs that had static values. We will now scroll down to our new drop-down, and when we click on this, we will see a list of site managers coming directly from our system of record. So this is reusing the JIGX function that we have already created. From here, if we save the record, it will then be persisted back into our system of record, in this case, SQL Server. Now, we can't see the record here because what we need to do is make a quick change to a store procedure that displays a list of forms relating to our job. If we return to SQL Server and we execute this query, we can now see the safety observation report record has been created. And what we want to do now is modify a store procedure that displays a list of forms related to this job. We can see at the top, we pass in a job ID, and then it queries different tables to return the list below the drop-down. Once we have altered this procedure, we just need to refresh our mobile application on the right-hand side. So within our job details, we have our job form list. This should now display our safety observation form that we filled out before. So this is how easy it is to make changes and associate new forms to our job. So to show you how a form could look, we have taken the existing form, made changes to the layout, made it more simple and easier and smarter for the user to fill out. If required, the user could add multiple photos. They can hide and show fields based on other values in a drop-down. And when they select a person from the list, we can then show more information about that person within the expanding panel. This allows the current user, if required, to call if maybe the observation is deemed urgent. We have other fields that we can hide and show. We can pre-populate the fields, as well as adding signatures to our form.
Thank you so much, Adam, for the demo, and thank you everyone else for joining us. I hope it's been informative and shown you what we can do with the JIGX platform, converting existing low no-code forms into beautiful native mobile apps, and how we can then push the data into SQL and read from other data sources to populate our drop-downs. We are really excited to be working with JIGX to create beautiful native mobile apps for our customers quickly and cost-effectively. If you're interested in empowering your mobile workforce with custom applications, or would like to see how your current mobile forms can be elevated with JIGX, we would love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to get in touch on info@legtree.com.